All right, we are back with another episode of Unknown and Talented Behind the Scenes with your very own Jelan Abrams and Charnae Jelan. What's
Hello.
poppin'?
Hey, I'm good. I'm over here, making sure the level's good, making sure the lighting's right. I'm excited to record. We haven't recorded in a minute, so
It
this is
has
kind
been
of
a
cool.
minute.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, speaking of it being a minute, this week will be 4 months of us being married. And I bring it up because people are always asking me, how's marriage? Sometimes even when we're together,
It's
like
kind of weird too, yeah.
I'm gonna be like, oh, please, oh, blink, like blink twice if you blink, please help me. But no,
I don't think the mic picked none of that up, but go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the visual. You could read my lips. Okay, but point is, people ask that a lot. It always tickles me because I don't know. I think a lot of the things about our relationship, while it has grown, it still mirrors a lot of the things that we've done forever.
Yeah, but it's funny. It's funny how you say that question is like, what do you expect me to say? Like, how's marriage going? Man, it sucks, like, I'm tired of her. It's like, what do you really, y'all don't really want to hear that. Y'all want to hear, oh, it's going good. Okay, great. So it's like, waste of a question.
I mean, it is going good, but I think it's funny because, yeah, if it wasn't going good, we wouldn't tell anybody.
Yeah, we
But
wouldn't either. So it's just like, if it's going bad, it's going great. If it's going great, it's going great. So it's just like,
yeah, but when people ask questions, you can tell if they tell the truth or not because their voice get high pitched. So that is the funny thing, though. Like if somebody asked me and I was like, "It's great," they'd be like,
yeah,
they would know I was lying.
yeah,
So it is always just a genuine. It's good. A lot of things we've done have been the same. Our habits, the way we function. But one thing that has changed in day to day since we are like pretty much always in the car together has been just what we listen to because we listen to really different things musically. But then also like what we're listening to when we listen to music is very different as well because if you followed Unknown and Talented, if you followed Faith in Music, Jalan had a career in producing, and so his ear goes to a lot of the like just all of the things that are on top of one another built to make the 808. And if you know a little bit about
all
me,
right. Hey. I made beats. You make the 808. What in the world? Oh my goodness. I made beats, yes.
I'm just saying that's 808. That's not what you can. I can't be technical.
The way you said it
Dang,
did sound right.
nah, can't let me
She
be
said
great.
it did.
Ask me again. Ask how's marriage because I can't be great. I can't. Anyway, the point is that was what he did. He made beats, so he listens to the beats in music.
Thank you.
But when I listen to music, I sing. So I'm listening to what's happening vocally. So I don't care how good the track sounds if the words and vocally what the person's saying like has no value or integrity. I'm like, this is awful. Turn it off. And if we're listening to something where like the words have integrity, but the beat is not like to Lon's liking, then Jalan is like, this is awful, turn it off. So a lot of times we're just chatting like in the car or it's pretty low so that we're not really actively listening to the music because if we were, then we probably would be like, what is this? So he'd be
Yeah.
like, what is this? Which is funny.
Yeah, so I kind of want to break it down a little more. So me, I'm listening to probably the most ratchetest music and, bad words and all this stuff because I'm into the beat, I'm into the vibe, and usually what they're saying doesn't matter. And Charnae, you usually listen
I
to what?
listen to gospel music. I'm listening to my Christian R&B. So
Yeah.
you know
It's
what
kind of
they're
hard
saying.
to blend it together.
Yeah, it's very different. But yeah, with that, that's the one thing that has been like our agree to disagree is just like having something on very low and we just don't really listen to it and we just talk to each other. So with that, I think the concept of like listening and how we communicate, similar to the cadence of us hearing the same song but hearing it differently. I think that's how communication works. Like you can be having the same conversation with someone but you hear completely different things depending on your background, depending on what it looks like for you to understand something. And so with that, sometimes people are in places of confrontation or friction, where there doesn't have to be, right? It's okay to have different advantages of how you hear something, but you do have to do work to understand that person based on how they listen and what they're listening to, so they have, a healthy space of communication.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how you say like listening to a conversation, you hear things differently. There used to be like a trend where it's like you use your wife's favorite words. So he's like, yeah, I'm about to go to Starbucks, then I'm gonna go to not TJ Maxx, Target. I'm about to go to Starbucks, and I'm about to go to Target. She's like, wait, what you doing? What you doing? But it's like those key words can change you emotionally. So listening to someone talk, you hear a key word. Let's say you like basketball, you hear them talk about basketball, you're like, we're cool. It's funny. It wasn't funny. It was kind of intrusive. So I was at work. This is when they're talking about like the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, right? So like we're communicating with one of my colleagues, and then another person that I don't talk to at all. He said, "Y'all talking about the beef?" And like it's a little cubicle, so his head's over the thing. Hey, y'all talking about the beef? And I'm like, I didn't even say nothing. I was just like, yo, I don't know you. You know what I'm saying? I'm not being rude, but it's like you just jumped in my conversation. So I was like, yeah, he's listening too hard.
Well, some people don't listen at all. So it's the balance of, when you're in conversation, what do you prefer as far as how one listens? Like I know for me, a pet peeve, like I hate when somebody cuts me off. Like I think active listening is something that involves a space of not listening to respond and not assuming when you listen. And so if you're cutting me off, then it just tells me that you're not really listening to me. You're already trying to respond, and I haven't even finished saying what I'm saying. And it gets me riled up. It does.
Well, I think there's a healthy way to cut somebody off. It's like when somebody is talking, I even think about like this podcast, for example. When somebody's talking and like you have a point, or let's say you say something I want to add on to that, is a healthy way to say, okay, hold on, wait a minute, and let me just go into it instead of like, I think the kind of cutting off you're talking about is more like you're having like a disagreement. When somebody's cutting you off during a disagreement, that's annoying. But when it's like y'all are both on the same page and you cut off, it's kind of like a little healthy. I feel like anyway.
Well, I think it depends too. Like when we're doing this, to your point, we've already talked about what we're going to talk about. So like if you cut me off in this instance, it's not bothering me because it's probably you just remembering something I'm forgetting, right?
Yeah.
But very different than a stranger. If we're having a conversation and like you don't know me, so you don't know me to be finishing my sentence and cutting me off. You just are finishing my sentence and jumping to a conclusion of what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
I work in sales, so there are times where I'm trying to explain something, answer a question, and they're already jumping in, and it's like, can I finish?
Yeah.
So that's definitely what I mean. But yeah, because to that same point, me and my best friend Chelsea, like it's been over 20 years. I can start telling a story and she knows how I'm about to tie it into something biblical, to tie it into a reality TV show, to tie it in to us getting dinner next week, right? So us cutting each other off definitely feels different. So the context and relationship of that person definitely changes that too.
Yeah, because I hate that as well. Especially when it's like, I feel like more when it's a disagreement or you're trying to make a point, and every time you're trying to make that point, you cut me off. I'm like, the sky's blue. And it's like, no, it's not. I'm like, let me explain to you why the sky is blue, But the sky really isn't blue, to be honest with you. You know that?
Yeah, I did.
You didn't know
You
that?
told me before.
Okay. All right.
I appreciate you sharing knowledge with me.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thinking about like bad listening, how would someone become a better listener though?
Well, I think there are lots of ways. I think one way is like to not cut people off. So I got a story about cutting people off, and then I'm gonna answer your question.
Okay.
So I went on this trip in undergrad, and there was a young ladies from our fashion merchandising program. We all went on the trip, and there was a young lady who always cut people off, and she was so sweet, she was so bubbly, but you could not start talking about something without her cutting you off. And like all the other girls in the group would be irritated and be talking about her behind her back. And for me, I'm just the person that's like, if you're doing something, like, I would rather let you know so that you could be subject to correction, because you may not realize it and you might change how you're interacting if you knew. So I don't really love the whole like snickery girl talking behind their back. It's like, say to my face or it's not being said. And so because I have that kind of energy, we're all at dinner and she cut somebody off. Okay, so I'm a person that's like, if I'm gonna give you feedback, and this is not a good way to give feedback, but like if you're doing the actual thing, then I'm gonna catch you when you're doing it. Like, caught you red-handed. So we're at dinner, and I was like, "Girl, see what happened right there." She was like, "What happened?" I was like, "You just cut her off." And I was like, everybody this whole week, this far,
Oh boy.
I was still younger. It's the ways to not be chaotic. I'm trying to be chaotic, but I just didn't think they was all gonna act like they okay. I'm just like, girl, this week, like we love talking to you, but sometimes you just be just chopping up, just every 5 seconds, just cut somebody off, and we want to hear what they gotta say just as much as we hear what you gotta say. And so, like, is it possible for you to do less of that? Still share intentionally. And then the rest of the girls were sitting there just quiet, looking awkward, like they wasn't going to admit. I was just like, just like, they've been saying it. I'm just going to tell you, you've been doing it because we still like you and we like talking to you, but it's just sort of annoying. And I think it's just fate to have to be here with you 3 more days and you cut everybody off the whole day. And every time you do it, they're making eyes at each other. And I'm just like, just be grown and say it to her face. But that's when I learned, don't do that. Don't, even if you mean well, don't call somebody out in the midst of the group, because half the time the group is going to be fake and act like they hadn't been doing what you were saying. But also, don't cut people off. So that's that on that. But that's to answer one part of that. Don't cut people off. If you're somebody who always cuts people off and always interjects, like, there's a difference between, there's certain times where you're excited to interject. If you always interject, the people around you probably wish you would interject a bit less. So that's one thing. But then also, in our society, it's very easy to be on your phone or to be multitasking.
Wait a minute. Are you gonna pass it to me?
Well, you asked me a question. You don't want me to answer?
I know, but the question question is for the whole group.
Can I give 2 answers? We're the group. It's just us 2.
I know, but I'm just saying, it's like what you answer your part. I wonder if I wanted to interject in what you just said. You're moving on to social media now. You didn't give me a chance to. I'm listening. I didn't cut you off the whole time. Now you change the topics, and I'm like, wait a minute.
I was just going to say 2 ways that they could be better.
Okay, go ahead.
Listeners.
I love you too, baby.
I adore you. So, the next thing is that making eye contact when you're speaking is also a way to better listening. So now that I'm done making my 2 points, I'm going to hand it back over to your host so that he can elaborate.
Oh boy. Okay. So I have, I just want to talk on the first point of not cutting people off. I feel like it is important for you to realize you want to be a better listener. I think that's the first thing. It's hard for someone, especially as an adult, to point out someone that's you're not good at listening. It's hard to correct someone that way, because once we're adults, we feel like we know a lot. So I think it's important for you to realize that you want to be a better listener. And I think a way to actually do it was something that you were saying. It's like not cutting people off. Realize that you're not the center of the universe. Like when somebody's having a conversation, you can just take the back seat and just listen and just have that person talk. Because that's a great way to catch somebody in a lie too. It's like when you just listen to somebody, you're like, all right, let me hear what they got to say. Like, and they just continuously talking, and you're like, wait a minute, 1 + 1 don't equal 2, But it's like you want to just back up and just let them be the star. Now you can just interject, because what I've realized is that people like talking about themselves. Like it's so easy to have a conversation by just letting that person talk. It's like, I don't remember who I was talking to. What was it? Okay, I got it. I'm not gonna kill nothing else. But pretty much I was reading a book called The Art of Small Talk, right? And basically the point of that book was to be a better communicator. But the most important thing that they talked about in that book was listening. Is that the person, make that other person the star, they're going to feel so good about you, because now it's like, wow, I was able to spread, somebody cares about what I was going through in life. So always let that person talk, and then you just ask some follow-up questions on that. It's like, let's say Charnae, we're talking about fishing. We don't talk about fishing, but you're talking about fishing, right? I don't know, it's random. So let's just say you're talking about, fashion then. Let's go a bit of fashion then. So let's say you're talking about fashion, and then now I ask you a follow-up and saying, okay, so what's your best type of fashion? Winter fashion or summer fashion? Now you have more talking, more stories to say, and I'm just chilling like, And then like now I can go on top of that, talk about my fashion, but it's still your story. So you're being a great listener by just letting that person talk. But now it's like you had a full conversation because you're listening to that person.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm listening. So this is something funny too. I definitely process when I listen. So even when I'm on my sales calls, there are moments where I'm quiet, and my team will point it out because I can be quiet and just sit with something. And it's funny because in sales it helps me a lot because sometimes I just need to let my mind regroup because I'm thinking of a couple different things. When I do it with Jalan, sometimes it's funny though, because I can tell he's like wondering, like, am I listening to him? And I'm like, yeah, I did hear you. I did hear you. I promise. Give me like 5 seconds. I'm gonna respond. So I think that's funny too. You have to like sort of become and it depends on the relationship too, because that's what I was thinking about. Like when you're thinking about sales or networking, which I believe this book was sort of speaking about those type of things,
Yeah.
right? There's a different listening that you're doing because there is like an end game in mind. Which still parallels, but sometimes is a little different to like unique cadences of how you listen to someone that you're in a relationship with, whether it's family, your siblings. Like sometimes it's a little different and you sort of used to it. Jelon, so I'm telling myself, but my sister knows this. Sometimes we just call each other to talk, but our talking is not really to fully be in conversation. I talk to my sister sometimes multiple times a day throughout the week. So every conversation is not one where we're genuinely uploading information to each other. Sometimes she will call me because she doesn't know what she wants to eat. She doesn't really want me to let her know what to eat, but she needs to think out loud with me on the phone as she makes this decision. And so I will have the phone on speaker and be doing something in the other room and then just here and there be like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Because I am listening to her, but I understand that ultimately she will come to a decision at the end of this like 10-minute call with or without me. So I'm not deeply invested. And I remember when we first started dating, I would do it and he would just be looking at me like, you're not going to talk. And I'm like, mm-mm. And then 5 minutes later, she'd be like, okay, perfect. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. All right, I'm going to talk to you later. And she'd be very content because that's just the nature of the call. So it's sort of funny. Every conversation can feel a little different, like depending on who you're talking to and the structure of what you're used to.
Yeah, and you made actually a good point, because you talked about eye contact, right? But listening is not only like in person listening; it's
Yeah.
also on the phone listening or FaceTime listening. I'm gonna talk about my point and yours. Like, what's the difference? I feel like when you're actually with that person, you have to be more intentional with your listening. You have to have eye contact. You have to, either yeah, and like do all of that. I feel like when you're on your phone, you can legit do whatever you want, like you said, and it's like I'm still listening, but I don't have to be as active listening as I am in person. Because listening is not only just hearing what they're saying, but it's also letting that person know you're listening. Like for example, me and Charnae is talking, and I'm sitting here like, all right, whatever. You know what I mean? Like doing all that. That's not listening. But it's like when we're on the phone, I've never done this, by the way. But if we're on the phone, I don't like what you said. All right, whatever. Yeah, but I'm not saying it. But that's kind of like how I'm reacting. You don't really feel that. So I think it's definitely probably harder to listen to someone on person instead of like on the phone.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's even like thinking about conflict is the reason why a lot of things they like encourage like to try to talk to that person in person if possible because like you're saying there's body language you can pick up on, there's things that you would not realize if you're on the phone.
Yeah.
Also, if you're trying to have a conversation about something really important and you don't realize they just spilled coffee all over the desk or the cat's running across their laptop or something where you can be misconstruing like their attentiveness based on things that are happening around them you have no context for when you're trying to have a tough conversation. So I think sort of like a different tier of this, but also I think it's mindful to think about the conversation you're having when listening and then give grace for certain circumstances because yeah, to double down on your point, the way you listen in person and being able to improve that is very different from the activeness of like what it may look like on a phone call. If the person's driving and you're, sitting down somewhere, like if you're out in public, all of those things change the trajectory of what that listening may feel like.
Yeah, yeah. Went to church this morning, and he was talking about breaking up. So it's funny he said that, because that's another way of, communication. Is like you can break up in person, or you can break up on the phone, or FaceTime. I say don't break up with nobody in person. Make sure it's always on the phone, or even text if you have to, or just ghost them, to be honest with you. But I would say, because in person, like trying to have that conversation with someone and like saying you're gonna break up with them, they looking at you like, all right, whatever. You know what I mean? Having it on the phone, do whatever and keep it moving.
Don't do that. Don't ignore that. Okay. Don't.
I mean, don't do that.
That's bad advice.
I think it's better to break up with somebody. All right, we moving off of the topic. I think it's better to break up with somebody. At least call them. I don't think it makes sense to, let's meet up at Starbucks to tell you that I'm breaking up with you. That makes no sense.
I think it depends on the length of the relationship. This is all contextual.
It don't matter how long the relationship is.
If you've been with somebody since, you think about people like in high school, right? And like you're going to different colleges, and like, all right, you're going to Utah, and I'll be in Pennsylvania, and it's coming to an end. To meet up with that person in person, to give back their things, and to have one moment of like, we're not doing this because I don't rock with you. It's just life looks different. That's a different breakup. Or like you could do that in person. It's different than like if you met somebody on, out in a club and you hung out with them for a month, and then you realize that they're, it's sort of weird, and you just attracted to them, and then you call them up on the phone and you're like, this is over. So I'm just saying there's different contexts for breaking up with people too, because it's like,
if it's a month, I'm not calling you. Like, if it's just a month, why I gotta call you for? Just stop calling.
If you were dating that person, then you were still dating them.
I'm sorry, you too nice. I'm not even gonna text her. Keep it short.
No, I'm not nice. I wanted people to understand why I wanted nothing to do with them. So I needed them to know that, so that they could take that feedback into their next situation. It wasn't a nicety. I just so you ain't out here being like, oh, that girl, she was no. I want you to understand what was wrong. I
think people can get the hint though. It's like you call somebody. I remember one time this girl didn't text me back for like close to 24 hours. I got the hint, and I said I'm not texting her back, because she's obviously doesn't want nothing to do with me, and I'm not gonna be like begging her. You know what I mean? You get the point. I'm just saying, if you get the point, get the point. She got the point that I understand what she said, and I don't need to talk to her. You know what I mean? Make it happen. I don't think you got to be meeting up with people all the time. All right, back to listening. See, this is why we don't have a relationship podcast, because we could just be talking forever about nonsense. Back to listening. Okay, so how did you become a good listener? Oh, actually, no. Do you think you're a good listener?
I think I'm an excellent listener.
Okay. And how did you become a good listener? I want to hear the backstory. How Charnae became an excellent listener.
Thank you. I'm going to tell the story. I would like no interruptions, please, while I go on this long story. Thank you. So it all started. No, but I think the context of being the youngest, but also my siblings being like 6 and 7 years older than me, and everyone being very opinionated. And there were lots of things that they would talk about that honestly just went over my head because I was much younger. So the best thing that I could do to gain context was to just really sit and listen. Me trying to interject or say something was usually met with like looking at me like, girl, what are you talking about? Or just laughing. When little kids say something, they interject and they don't know anything about what they're talking about, but they just want to be in a conversation so bad. And I didn't like really being laughed at, because I was like, I'm for real. So I said, well, if I'm gonna be for real, let me just listen more and not always try to interject like I have to have something to say. And that just sort of built into my personality. Even now, I'll very much be in a space, in a room, if I'm in a new group or new area, or even now just in areas where I know people I'm talking to, but I'm still just gaining context. Like you said earlier, like you can learn a lot. You can catch somebody in a lie. You can realize like something they're saying don't really make sense if you just let them talk. Go ahead and let them communicate things. And so lots of times I'll just sit and listen, and I'll just observe. And then when I do have something to say, then I feel like it's well received because it's in a space of like I'm actually trying to understand what's happening. So I'm not that person that like I feel like everybody needs to always hear what I gotta say, or that I always need to interject. But if I am saying something, it's usually from a context of wanting to be intentional of sharing, based on what I've heard.
Do you think growing up being the youngest and not your words not being like really respected around everybody else, did that make you think right now want to share less, or like kind of like scared to share your opinions because of that?
I don't know if scared is the right word. I just sometimes I don't feel like people listen to me. Now, oh, that's the interesting thing, advantage. I think I'm a great listener, but I think even like when sometimes I'm snippy and I'm just like, are you even listening to me? It still comes from that context of feeling like I was just not heard and like not listened to. Not to make this a therapy session, but I do think that creates a space where I don't always feel the need to share because I'm like, is anyone really even listening to me when I'm sharing anyway? So I think I do prefer to listen than share because of that. I rather just hear people out, and then when something needs to be said, can say it. But sometimes I'm just like, nah, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you? You feel like you're a good listener?
I think I am, and I think I'm every day like working on it, becoming better. I know definitely listening back to like my podcast episodes of interviewing people, it's like, oh, that was a good job, Jelon, of like listening to them and then changing subjects. And other times I'm like, ooh, you didn't hear anything they just said. You just was moving. So I think it's definitely cool to do this podcast and also hear yourself back. So probably advice that, might be a little weird advice. Record a conversation with somebody. No, actually, never mind. Never mind. Never mind. Never
That
mind.
might be illegal. I don't know.
Never mind.
Trying to get people cut.
What is the way for them to get hear them? I don't know.
I think with people who you trust, you can always solicit feedback.
That's safe. That's safe. That's safe. There you go. That's safe. Okay.
Because people around you will let you know. Like we had a conversation about this before, how we feel like each other listens and things. So the people closest to you will be honest with you of like, you can grow here, you could be better in this regard, or, because then we sort of got into a deeper level of there's listening, and then there's the layer of every time that you listen, you may still not fully comprehend and understand. So then having the humility to ask additional questions or to relay back to them. We were watching this it was this therapist video, and she was talking about like in confrontation, when someone says something, like for you to repeat back, like, so what I heard you say was, and Jalan was like, that's a lot of work. And I was like, I agree, like that's a lot. But at the same time, there are times where somebody is saying something, and based on your perspective or your vantage or your assumptions, you could, if you did that exercise with someone and you repeated back to them what you thought they said, you may not even be articulating what they said. Let's do it right now. So now, Jalan, I just made that statement. I want you to ask me in the sense of like, okay, so what I believe you said was, you test it out, do it live.
So what I believe you said was, I don't know if it's supposed to just repeat what you said, but what I believe you said was, we was watching a therapy session or a lady talking about therapy, and she was explaining how it was important to ask the person, what you thought they said, and like kind of like rehearse it that way.
Yeah.
Say it like that.
Correct.
I believe you said, yeah.
Yeah. And it's as simple as that. It's just to make sure that like you understood exactly what that person was telling you. So you really have to be listening, because I feel like you was nervous for a second, but you was listening to me.
I was, because I was listening, but like since we're doing a podcast, I'm also thinking about like what I was gonna say next. So it's like I think it's like active listening is listening to the person and not having your thought before they finish. So I think that's when you get to the cutoff part, or you're not listening to me. So you might have said one thing in the beginning, like, this is black, and then you just started talking about everything else, and then my first response is, it's not black, it's gray. You know what I mean? It's just like, did you not hear everything I just said? So it's like, I think that's dangerous, but also listening to somebody and like modifying your response by the new facts that they say is a better way to have a conversation. For me, how I became a pretty good listener, I think I'm pretty good. I think I always have work to do. But growing up, my dad, he was on me to make sure my communication skills were high. Like I remember him always saying, "Look at me." Like he's talking, he says, "Look at me," eye contact, and that was something that he made sure I had. So I was like little boy, 7, 8, staring at people when they were talking because I was making sure they knew I was listening to them, and my dad was the one actually saying, "What did I just say?" And like I have to know what he's talking about. So even now, like my dad, he talks. Like when we have conversations, he talks, and then like he might get lost in this conversation. He said, "Man, what was I talking about?" And he's legit doesn't remember, and I'm just like, I pick it right up and down. He's continuing because I'm so used to listening to him, especially him. Everybody else, I probably can't do that with everybody else. But it's like my dad got me in the habit of not only having great eye contact, but also listening for like if that person messed up what they're thinking, I know exactly how to finish it up. But I think another point in my life where I was able to use that tactic, it was I was a camp counselor. So a camp counselor, you have kids, right? It's funny how you were saying when you were a child you weren't really listened to because I don't feel like people are taught how to listen to children. So kind of what I did that I felt that I was successful at is I'm tall, the kid is like basically at your knees, and having a conversation or standing up over that child is not beneficial. So all the time what I did, I used to scoot down so you're legit talking eye to eye. So I'm hearing exactly what they're talking about. They know I'm listening to them. I'm not this big old thing over their head. And now it's like you realize like these kids is kind of smart. You know what I mean? It's like these kids are not dumb. These kids are kind of smart, and it can make you have like a different relationship with that child because you're actually listening to them, and now you could trust them to do something else because they know that I'm being listened to. I can be able to have a conversation with that person because kids are smart. I mean, kids is smart. So that's something I'm definitely gonna make sure I do with our kids is like making sure that they know how to have eye contact and they're being listened to. It's like, well, what you want for dinner? I think I want this, and it's like, all right, we legit have that instead of like you eat what I got,
Yeah.
because kids are smart, and I think kids are geniuses. So.
Yeah, yeah. And you're just building up a lot of skills that you'll need no matter what you do in life, being able to have healthy communication, like you said, having confidence. I mean, a lot of people, you can be adults and they can't maintain eye contact with you and things like that. It is helpful that you'll be able to, have that confidence, have that knowledge to hear things and really retain it. And humility, I think if you didn't hear something correctly, just being able to build those skills as well to start being able to say, oh, okay, I don't think I heard you correctly. I feel like I do that all the time. I don't always do it in a way that sounds humble because sometimes I'd be confused and I'd be like, what you say? And I'm like, hold on, I know that's not what you said.
Yeah, I like how you said asking them as well because I think about when you're introducing yourself to someone and it's like, okay, my name is Jelan, and it's like, oh, whatever, and then like you have such a great time with this person, you say, all right, bye, and you don't even remember their name. Now you feel bad because you just had a whole cool day with somebody and you don't remember their name, and you're sitting there like, dang, I feel like a jerk now because I don't remember this person's name. So I always make sure like when I'm introducing myself to someone, not even like date wise, just mean like meeting someone in general, and you just kind of remember or repeat their name back to them to make sure is their right name because you could this could be someone that could be your next friend, or if it is relationship wise, somebody you're in a relationship with and you don't even remember their name at the end of the day, you can't ask them now. It's like, hey, what's your name again? I couldn't do that. I feel weird doing that.
Yeah, it's funny though, because I remember our first phone call conversation. He had texted me and was like, oh, can I call you? So I was like, yeah. And so I picked up the phone and I was like, hey. And he was like, hey, it's Jelan. He was like, Jelan. And like literally broke down how to say his name. And I ain't even gonna lie to you, I was surely about to call the brother Jalen. So I'm really glad that he said it before. before. Yeah. And then, after that, I was able to remember it. And in my phone, his name is still broken out.
To this day, broken out.
It's
because my wife can't remember my name.
JUH-LAHN. It's still like that because it tickled me so much that he said it like that. He was like Jelan, and I said, okay, I'm gonna put it in my phone just like that, Jelan.
I think that's the little things. I think it's the little thing. I think the most important thing to someone is their name, but it's also like stuff that they say. I remember I went on a date. I think it was probably like the third date. And the girl said my name wrong. I was like, I've never seen this girl ever. I didn't even correct her either. I said, okay.
It was funny
That's
because I
it.
literally was about to be like, "That's why we here today." Because I remembered how to say his name. That's
Exactly.
funny.
It is. It is. I'm like, you can't say somebody's name wrong on the third date. That's ridiculous. Like when somebody says Charmaine, what if I call you Charmaine the whole time? Like, what in the world? Like, we did all this stuff and Charmaine is crazy. Like, don't you can't even correct somebody if they say your name wrong on the third date. It's like, all right, bro.
Just gotta dead it.
Yeah, you got to. It don't matter how
So
much you like the person. No, you got my name wrong. It's crazy. You don't do your due diligence.
look. I have a story. We're gonna get back on topic, but it's funny because my uncle John, his name is not John. My auntie met him at a party, and it was loud. They was hyped. They was dancing. The music was up, and he introduced himself as Bernard Johnson. But all she heard was John. So she called him John. And to this day, like people in our family, we call him Uncle John. And that man's name is Bernard. So it tickled me because she was like, it's a dead. And it was like, I mean, what if they get your name partially right? What if they sort of knew your name? Is it still dead?
Well, it's good that I had that mindset because we might not be here if I let everybody call me whatever they want to call me. I don't even like the nickname Jay either. It's like, don't call me Jay. It's Jalad. I remember I introduced myself. They was like, do you have a nickname? I said, what do you mean? Do I have a nickname? What kind of question is that? Oh, you don't ask that. You don't ask somebody that on the first day you meet them.
Lon. I love calling you Lon.
Do you have it? I'm saying that's a nickname, but I wouldn't tell nobody. Like, you don't want certain people that you just meet to, unless you go by that, you don't let people call you random nicknames.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, you could use a nickname. No, they can call you whatever they want.
Well,
I'm sorry, I don't even know what we talking
no,
about.
it's funny. I'm just laughing because I know people gonna be like, all right, where are y'all at? But,
I just feel like we're just talking about listening, and I feel like people care about what they're saying. Like people, like they are the center of the world. So if you're not even listening to someone, it's hard for them to respect you because like, well, stuff I had to say is important, just like you. So that's why you feel that way when somebody's cutting you off, or even when you're a child and they're not listening. You're like, am I not important? Like, why or do you think your word is over mine?
yeah, yeah. I think all of these things still, like, even though we sort of went into different like weavings of communication and chatting, still build upon that thought of people wanting to, like you said, wanting to feel heard, wanting to feel understood and respected, and wanting to feel safe in sharing. So I think all of those things are part of listening. And yeah, I kind of think any other things you think.
Probably we didn't really get into like the conflict resolutions about listening. I think that's a really good way to resolve conflict by being a listener.
Yeah, I think it's a way to avoid conflict. Honestly, if you're listening, then if
think you
somebody
can.
said, "Hey, can you take this out for dinner?" and you hear them and you take it out, then you avoid conflict. If it's now time for dinner and it's like, "All right, I'm gonna go make this something," you took out the fridge and you like, "You told me to take that fridge." It's like, "I told you, you don't never listen to me," and then it becomes a whole fight. So you can really avoid conflict if you listen
But
to.
I don't think you can always
Not
avoid
always,
conflict,
but
but I think it's
sometimes.
like you could kind of like, you know, like have the conflict, but still be a good listener. Be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I wasn't listening to you, or like let that person. You gotta let that person get it off sometimes. You can't just be cutting them off because now that's when it's a conflict. It's like now when she's going crazy, you don't never listen to me, and then you got that's when you listen. You're like, you're right, honey, I don't listen to you. I'm so sorry. I'm just saying, it's like because I think it's hard to have an argument with somebody when they're calm. It's like when somebody's like yelling at you and you're sitting there like, you know, I think it's hard to have a conversation. I mean, it's hard to have a continued argument. What do you think? If somebody's yelling, I don't know. Let somebody just ready to fight. Somebody's ready to
I was
fight you.
about to say, I don't know. Some people be amped up and they be so. All right, before I was fully sanctified, I used to watch Bad Girls Club, and sometimes it'd be somebody there and they weren't trying to fight that person because like they was all talk, and then they start talking to somebody who was a fighter, and then that person was ready to box, and it didn't matter how calm they stayed. That person somehow had their hair in their hand in like the next 5 seconds. So some people are just not well. So even if you're calm, they might just remember that. We remember we watched the Love Is Blind. Which one was that? South Africa, and he wasn't trying to fight with her, and she started throwing stuff on him. And you
Oh
remember? So
yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
even if you are calm,
yeah.
if somebody's really riled up,
But
That's a whole different
I
thing.
think that
But
goes into listening as well. It's like, because basically what it was that he was in a bad relationship and he didn't realize he's in a
they
bad
still
relationship.
together. They got a
Yeah,
whole
they still,
child.
it's crazy. But I just think it's
Wow.
because I think it's that they're like not listening to what this person is saying. Like she was disrespecting him, and it's like once you hear somebody disrespecting you, you see what kind of character they have. Now it's like your time to move. But he's like, oh, she just acting this way because da, da, da. And it's like no, it's like this person is showing you who they are. You're seeing what they are. You're listening to what they're saying, and now you have to move accordingly. But you're like, oh, this ain't real.
And some people don't. Some people don't. Like people, like you said, they'll tell you who they are. They'll show you who they are. Listen, listen. You got to. You got to.
All right, so we got to get one more little point before we go. We talked about where'd you learn listening. Okay, so one thing we could talk about, what area of listening do you think you can improve on, even though you're an excellent listener? Or you got some other notes in there?
No, I think we hit on everything. Let's see.
How about me go first?
You can go first.
Okay. I think for me, an area of listening is the same way we were talking about conflict, of listening to someone even though you disagree with what they're saying. I think that's probably the hardest type of listening, is because you disagree with them the 2 seconds they started talking, and now you have to sit it through and be like, hear them all out and now respond. I think that's probably the hardest for me, especially like, especially if they're like coming at your character and you're like, you're totally wrong. Trying to listen and just let them let them get it off, and then now having your response to kind of end it. I think that's something I really have to work on.
I think one thing I want to do more of listening is the exercise we spoke to. Like, there are lots of times where I feel like I'm listening, I'm hearing what's going on, but I also think, again, just thinking about avoiding confrontation, just confirming and understanding what people are saying and listening, just to further like make sure that that person feels heard, feels understood, and to make sure I'm fully clarifying things, because I think the next deeper piece of listening is then, asking those additional questions when needed. So I think for me is like just taking that pause after I listen, to just repeat back, and then if needed, asking clarifying questions, because I think that's helpful just to fully understand like why people feel away, or why they're sharing what they're sharing, and not assume. So yeah, because I think one thing you can still always grow in listening. Even if you're fully listening to someone, then you still may not fully respond, in a way that shows you're listening. So I think all of those pieces have to marry each other. I don't know if that makes sense. Like you can, have someone and they just talk and talk and talk and you listen, but then at the end of it, if you don't like respond actively, if like reiterating what they said and confirming it, they may feel like you're not listening. So I feel like sometimes people may think I'm not listening, but I'm just really quiet. So I think one thing I'm going to do more with listening is just like reiterating back to people what they said to me. That way they know I really am listening to them, and I'm not just like thinking like, man, I wish he was done talking. Like, no, I'm just listening. So
Yeah. I like how you said that, because we also talk about how people have short attention spans now. It's like they're always on to the next thing. So when someone's having a conversation with you, or for even a long conversation, you're like, all right, bro, let me start scrolling. All right, let me see what's on TV. But you still have to be active, engaged in that conversation. So I think listening becomes tougher as we have so many different distractions and people's minds just moving so quick. But that's definitely something that we have to make sure we can stay on top of. And you need to make sure you stay on top of as well, because it's going to be very, very important to be a listener in anything you do. I think, especially, I think we're all we're all in sales. We might not be selling anything out there, but we're selling ourselves. Like I had to sell myself to you, you know what I mean? So I had to listen. But I'm just saying we're all selling each other. We might sell yourself to you. Might have to sell myself to the job so they know that I'm great for the next thing. But you also have to listen, because especially you think about interviewing, they're asking you questions. If you're not listening to the question, you ain't gonna be able to answer the question. and now you stuck. So I think listening helps you with everything, and just got to know that you have to have that discipline to sit down and just focus on what they're saying so you can think about that response for the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm just grateful you took this time to listen to me, hear me out, Jelan. I appreciate you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm happy that you're happy that I was listening to you.
If you're still listening at this point in the episode, please comment, like, subscribe, share. If there are ways that you think we didn't hit on that you can still improve listening, or ways you want to improve listening, definitely drop them in the comments below. But until next time you listen to the podcast, be easy. It feels good to be back. I haven't done it in a while.
Yeah, man, you gotta do more often. All right, y'all. Can I say all right, y'all?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, y'all.